Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Darsh Shah,
And I'm Dr. Altamash Raja,
and welcome to Medicine Redefined,
a podcast where we will explore the often overlooked but necessary components of health, what we consider to be the fundamentals.
We will investigate topics and practices that can give you and your patients the best chance to optimize a healthy lifestyle. It's time to move the needle forward and put the health back in healthcare.
Hey there, this is Dr. Erin Wiseman. I'm a fellow Doctor Podcast Network member, life coach, and mama 3. I kick butt, I take names, and I help other high-achieving people do the exact same. And today, I want to invite you over to my podcast, Dr. Me First. It's well over 300 episodes, and each one is filled with inspiration and advice from amazing guests. So grab your wife, your mom, your sister, your best friend, and come tune in as we explore what it means to be a woman in medicine and a woman in this world. Because this podcast is a dose of everything that I needed when I was burned out, exhausted, and ready to quit it all. At the end of the day, I do this to help you feel more connected to yourself and to connect with others. I love to end my show with a kick of encouragement, so here's my favorite tagline. Your life, your calling, your pulse matters. See you over at Dr. Me First.
Thank you, Dr. Wiseman, for that awesome intro. Now, guys, I am super excited to share our guest with you today, none other than Ryan Inman. Ryan is a full-time certified financial planner, but you'll recognize him from his own podcast, Financial Residency, which is one of my favorite resources for financial education. As you've learned thus far in this show, is all about filling in the knowledge gaps and reframing our perspective on what it means to be healthy. And there is a huge gap when it comes to financial literacy, not just for physicians, but the majority of folks in most disciplines. I think we can all agree that the state of our finances has a strong correlation with everything we do and our overall health. So that's why I think this will be an extremely valuable discussion for all my medical colleagues. And with so many new physicians starting their medical journey this week, hopefully there will be a few things you'll take away from this show that will have a net positive in your own life. So in this show today, we talk about reframing our perspective on student debt, asset protection, and after listening to the show, you'll learn what the most important asset is, especially if you're a physician. We talk about our relationship with money and why our behavior is a good indicator of our financial growth. We also talk about the various different models for financial advisors and how to identify a good financial planner, if that's what you choose as the best decision for you. We talk about the why for doing what we do and how that may be the step one for creating our financial plan. And we also discuss the common pitfalls for early career physicians and big ticket items that you want to make sure you take care of to prepare yourself for financial success. Lastly, we learn about Ryan's journey and why he decided to work exclusively with physicians. So without further delay, please enjoy this episode with Ryan Inman.
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Medicine Redefined. Today we have Ryan Inman. Ryan, what's going on, man?
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me on.
What's up?
Oh, thanks for being here. Thanks for being here, man. Super excited to have this conversation. And, for those of at least people who are listening here and who know about you are probably thinking, what does what you talk about routinely, financial health, have to kind of do with the mission of our show? And I think if we look at it at a second glance, obviously there are a lot of implications to just general overall well-being and health. And we'll touch on that a little bit later on. But for those people who live under a rock and don't know about you or your show or what you do, why don't you kind of give us a little backstory about, who you are and your journey?
I love it. There's a little justification for why I come on a show. Like, that's always a great sign. I'm excited to be here. And I think a lot of what I talk about on the personal finance side for physicians really will help someone understand if they're going through burnout for various reasons. One of them will likely have financial impacts, and understanding your finances and being more in control and feeling more confident will help you, I think, overall just be a better physician, be a better father, mother, daughter, son, just love life a little bit more if you're more in control of something that you guys were never taught or trained in school. And a little bit about me. I am married to a pediatric pulmonologist. We've been together for 20 years now. So I've been around med school, residency, 3 years of fellowship. We had 2 kids in fellowship, so that made it a lot harder too. But just being married to medicine is a whole different, unique experience that I kind of bring to the table when I talk about personal finances, because we literally have gone through it. We've lived through it. I've been where a lot of you are. Some of you are maybe further along in your careers than maybe my wife is, but a lot of you are potentially behind where she's at. And I kind of sit on your side of the table, so to speak, and can tell you how, how hard it is, share the pains and joys of being in medicine. And
Mhm.
I think understanding your personal finances and being able to talk through and have an intelligent conversation of what you want to do and how you want to do it and what are your opportunities and what are your challenges that are coming up and how that impacts your finances are really going to be beneficial for anyone listening.
Yeah, so let's kind of get into that, right? Because when we think about money as physicians, it's kind of later in the game, right? When we start applying to medical school and then we accumulate debt and we say, "Oh my God, there's a lot of money you got to invest in it," right? And so when we think about financial health, those two words really don't go hand in hand until later on. But what are the implications of financial health? Why is it so important for us physicians to understand what it means?
So if we think about everyone that you went to college with that didn't go the crazy path of medicine, right? They went to business or whatever. They started working at like 21, 22 years old and they were able to earn, I don't care if they're making 40K, 60K, 100K, doesn't matter. But they're starting to earn money. So they're going in the positive at some point. They're saving in their 401ks. They're saving in their IRAs. They're potentially, saving to put a down payment on a home. Maybe they've already bought a home. And by the time that a physician typically finishes, you're in your early 30s, that person has a 10-year head start on you. Right? It's kind of a weird abstract way to think about what everyone else is doing because you're so trapped into what all of your peers are doing because that's who you've been with. You take the brightest of our population, you shove all you competitive people together, and that's all you think about. But there's other people outside of that group, and they've been saving and earning for a decade.
Yeah.
Now, granted, their income potential is going to be capped, unlike
Mhm.
I think physicians mostly aren't going to be capped, or at least their cap is significantly higher than someone who's not a
Yeah.
physician. But if we think about now you've gone the road of you're not earning money, you're actually taking on debt. Our average client's a little over $300,000 is student loan debt per physician. So that means that we have many dual physician households that are 6, 7, 800. We have actually over $1 million of student debt just alone. So you're taking on this debt in order to earn this potential income, which you guys aren't even really thinking about the dollars. You didn't become a doctor to become super rich. If you did, probably went into derm, but I'm kidding. I love you, derm people. Don't hate me. I'm joking. Uh, but the idea though is that you took on significant amount of debt to buy a business, and that business is in your head. I talk about it on the show all the time. Don't feel guilty that you took this debt on. If I look at it in the business sense, out in the business world, if I said, "Hey, look, there's an income stream out there that I could capture and buy, and this income stream is going to gross about $300,000 a year, and I could pay $300,000 a year for that income and know that that income is going to be safe and secure for the most part." We didn't anticipate COVID, but I don't think we're going to have multiple black swan events happen in our lifetime. And I think most of the physicians that we work with saw downwards of 20% reduction in pay, and they're almost fully back now. So I think that it's a fairly secure income. And if we think about, I could pay 1-to-1 in the business world, I'll take that all day long. Like, most businesses are going to trade at multiples, 2, 3. Tech companies, they're trading at 20, 30. I mean, look at public companies with their price to earnings ratios. Hundreds potentially. And these are big names, Fortune 500 companies trading at 60x earnings. And we're looking at a physician buying a fairly stable income in a great profession for a 1-to-1 ratio. So if you think about the debt as buying a business and not, "Oh my goodness, I took on all this student debt. Now I'm super in the hole," and you're feeling really overwhelmed, just a mindset change around that should be a little more freeing. But you got to protect that income. So obviously you want to show up to work and do the right thing and no malpractice and all that, but
Mhm.
protect it also from the other end of, well, this is why disability insurance is really, really important. And this is why if you have people who are dependent on your income, so a spouse or kids, or say your parents were epic and paid off your med school, but that was their retirement plan because now they need you to cover their retirement. you have dependents, right? People who are dependent on that income, you need life insurance. And you would get term life insurance, to be very specific, not whole life or permanent insurance. You would get term insurance for that. But the idea is that you're now protecting and safeguarding that income stream, again, that's in your head, but treat it as a business. That's why it's really important to understand finances, because you start off in the hole. And especially compared to your college friends or people you went to high school with, they didn't go down the path of medicine. You're in the hole, and now you're out potentially. You're maybe a resident and still not earning that much, but let's say you're a brand new attending, you're out, you're making good money you deserve to earn, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you've got some catch up. So you got to understand, well, I have not been saving because you couldn't. Residency is all about survival. To make this like perfectly clear, like just survive. And if you can learn decent money habits, so when the stakes are a lot higher, you're not going to be stupid and spend all your money and then wake up 5 years from now and go like, oh my goodness, I have nothing to show for this, right? You want to be able to take vacations and do things, but do it in moderation, and learn how money works and your relationship with money. But when you finish, you've got to start saving for retirement. You've got to start saving, your IRAs, your 401ks, your 403bs. Like that's a given. That should just be off the top. You don't even think about that as your actual savings rate. You're so far behind in the retirement piece. But then the extra money that's there, having a clear path and a clear meaning of what you want to do and what's important to you. Don't get caught up in the physician rat race, if you will, from a financial side of, hey, I'm strolling through the doctor parking lot and it's like Beamer, Mercedes, Land Rover. Holy crap, these are some nice cars. My 12-year-old Toyota stinks. I need a new one. Well, if you're not a car guy or car gal, you don't need one. I could get you from A to B. You don't have to do what your peers are doing, because I promise you this, out of 12 of those cars, 11 of them have debt on them. Most physicians are, well, I need a new car now because I'm now a doctor and that's what's expected of me. Sarah Falah wrote a fantastic book, and The Next Millionaire Next Door, and her dad wrote The Millionaire Next Door. They talk all about like the Joneses and living next door, and to someone who is, spendy and has nice cars and is always dining out and always going on these nice vacations. And that causes, it's called social indifference. It causes all of us to feel like we need to do that to keep up the lifestyle. And you guys get it from like, well, you're a doctor, you understand that. I get that, well, it must be nice to be married to a doctor. I'm like, oh, you would think, but there's a lot of debt, there's a lot of
You don't even
sacrifice.
know.
Like, I don't even want to sit down and explain this to you, because then I'm just going to get sad that I'm having to explain this to someone, and reliving some of those not fun times where like my wife was every fourth night in the hospital spending the night, and then I wouldn't see her the whole next day because she had to sleep. That's super fun from a, if we just think like this is a job, this isn't your whole life, this is a job, and that's what it's required to do the job. And that's a tough job. It's really hard. And you do that for many years. People they don't get it. They see all of us as physician families as the top 1%, the evil 1%ers. And you guys, make a ton of money. You can afford it. And you're like, I'm a resident and I make 60K and I have 300,000 in debt. Like, I am not that person yet. Maybe at some point, but not yet.
Yeah.
So it's tough.
And what I'll say that, man, even, you're talking about people, the whole keeping up with the Joneses concept of it, even people within your inner circle, they don't quite get it. So I was telling Darsh before you came on that I just bought a car today. Don't ask me what, you're not going to be happy. But I, so I was doing a lot of test drives and stuff, and the salespeople are like, hey man, like, what do you do? I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of a physician. They're like, okay, all right. So you're doing good. And I was like, no, you probably make more than I do. And so they don't understand. And I remember talking to actually my uncle recently, and, he was like, oh, don't look at this car. Look at, one of those luxury cars and whatnot. I was like, I can't afford that. He was like, no, in 2 years, you're going to be fine. You're going to, I was like, you have no idea. You have no idea. And sometimes it's not even worth explaining. But, at the outset, you mentioned that it's a crazy journey that we go down. Right. And it kind of brings me back to this point. I remember when my dean actually in medical school said that anybody who kind of goes down this path of, 4 years of undergrad training, and then maybe another 8 to 15 years of potentially more training, there has to be a screw loose. But you said that your spouse, right, your wife is a physician as well. Because you've been a financial advisor well before that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So why did you decide to primarily work with physicians? I mean, was it something that happened with you in your journey? Was it, something that you saw her get screwed over, something like that? Or what was it that attracted you that this is going to be your primary audience?
Yeah. So before I answer that, I want to go back really quick to your uncle and be like, well, in 2 years, you're golden, man. Right.
Yeah.
A lot of physicians think that way. Well, I know that, I'm going through residency right now. And when I come out and I'm going to be an anesthesiologist, like the average makes 350.
Hmm.
Right. So I'm going to just maybe relax a little bit and kind of spend some money here and there. And maybe I'll rack up a little credit card debt, because in 2 years, I'm golden. I'm good. Like I've got everything covered. Right. Well, what if something happens like, and you actually don't become an anesthesiologist? Maybe you get disabled. Maybe something, maybe you pass away. Like who knows, right? That's the extreme. Hopefully the brighter side of this is that you're still living and working and doing things. But what did you do? You just really harmed your behavior and your mindset and your relationship with money because you didn't have any delayed gratification off of that. You robbed your future self and basically sacrificed your future self to pay for stuff now. And when the money becomes a lot more than I'm making 60K a year to I'm making 350K a year, usually we see that behavior go, well, I've worked so hard. I don't really want to save anything my first year, and I'll save a bunch next year. And so I'm going to go on vacation. I'm going to buy a car. I'm going to buy a house. I'm going to do all these things. It's like I want my cake and eat it too in this first year, but next year I'll be good. And then next year comes and it's really, really hard to pare down lifestyle. It is really easy to let that go up. And I think it's like lifestyle inflation and how people just let it, more money, more problems, just let it go crazy. So I look at it again back in the corporate world and I say, anyone I don't care what industry, if you said, hey, Darsh, I know that you are just really good at this mid-managed job that you've got, and I'm going to increase your pay next year by 50%. You got a 50% raise. Your heart is probably going to fall out your pants, man.
Yeah.
Like you're going to fall over and just go, oh my God, what? 50%? If we looked at that from a resident perspective and said, hey, you make 60, next year you're going to make 90. You're like, well, my contract says 350. You're like, no, no, no. You're going to make 90. And the rest of that money, you're going to put towards your debts. You're going to save for your retirement. You're going to build that emergency fund that is not your credit card. It's an actual emergency fund. You're going to do all the right things next year. You're still going to increase your lifestyle a ton, but just getting one, maybe 2 more years of that 50% pay increase. So the following year, instead of making 90, you now make what, 130, 135? That's still an insane lifestyle. That's great. That's way better than most of your peers, and you're still doing all the responsible stuff. So to come back ultimately to your question around like, why did I get into this field? Why am I doing this? I had worked for several other financial planners. I actually did 2 master's degrees at University of San Diego, and during that was working at Merrill Lynch as an intern. One of my years of graduate here in La Jolla, and I basically realized that all of those big companies, it's all sales, like 90% sales
Mhm.
and 10% actual work with clients. And by work with clients, I mean, they get told from New York, hey, where they're headquartered, like, hey, these are your investment options that you can give to your clients. And the work that these advisors do would basically say, well, Darsh, you seem like you're an aggressive investor, so we'll put you into this portfolio.
Yeah.
And all they're doing is picking from this little list that came in from New York from headquarters and basically holding your hand saying, this is what your performance was and this is what you can do. Well, Merrill Lynch or Morgan Stanley or any of these big companies uh, likely are getting kickbacks and some incentives for putting them into these
Mhm.
funds. The advisors are charging a percentage of assets under management for just literally looking in a little box and checking a few things. Like there's not any real planning done. They're not looking at your budget. They're not helping you with anything else other than more products. Oh, you need that disability coverage we talked about? Oh, well, here's a nice product for you that is probably way over expensive, doesn't include any of the riders, and is probably not applicable to you, but they can sell it because that's their job. So I actually was really turned off on the whole industry. I was offered a job and said, no,
Yeah.
thanks. And I think went the dumbest way and I went into public accounting So I was an auditor for a couple of years. That was horrible. That was actually worse than the sales, which was comical. But then I ended up landing into 2 different working for 2 different planners, and they were fee only planners. They still charged an AUM fee, which I'm not a fan of at all. But there I got to understand a lot more about planning and how to do it, and was able to use my master's degrees into that. But I was still working with people who had made it. Everyone I worked with was 65, 70, 80, 90, right? They all had money. They were all retired, and it was all how to not run out of money or to how to pass down money, tax
Yeah.
efficiently. And that's fun, but, like, after a while, I'm like, I wanna help people like us. I wanna help people who need the help. I wanna help people who I can help grow their assets and help their relationship with money and help their actual relationship between themselves if they're married, or just feel overall more confident. I don't need to just work with people who have quote unquote made it. That's fine. It pays the bills. It's good money. I mean, I left a six-figure job to start my own company and make zero for several years, but I got to do it on my own terms. I got to help people that were like us, and I all of our friends are physicians or advisors. It's kinda how it works, I guess. And I got 1,000 questions from all of our friends because they were never taught anything in school, right? How do I, why does it say a minimum on my credit card? Is that what I actually pay, or should I pay more than that? Well, what is the interest and how do they calculate it? And then how do I buy a home? And I just got 1,000 questions. So that's actually how the financial residency podcast started. Was I said, I'm just going to create all this and you guys are just going to listen. So give me like a dozen things you want to know. And like probably the first 30 shows were the topics were actually because someone in my personal circle was like, I don't know how to do this, or I don't know what this is. And so I'd bring people on and have a good discussion and good dialogue. Taylor, my wife, would always make fun of me, like, who the heck's going to listen to you? I'm like, I don't know. Someone hopefully is going to get something. If I could imagine if I could get to like 3 or 4 or 500 people, you know how cool that would be?
Just a few thousand all
Yeah.
across the world. No big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, now we're like 5,000 a show, which
Amazing.
is fantastic. And it's been, I mean, such a dream come true to get emails where people are like, "You've helped us so much, and I was about to buy this product, and then I heard your show, and then I started digging into it, and I realized I was just getting swindled by this," or, "Hey, you've helped us, we walked through XYZ exercise, and now we understand and feel more like, that's why I do it. Those emails are amazing, or the voicemails people send in are amazing, but why I work one-on-one with clients and we only work with MDs and DOs is because I wanna help people like us actually make it and not feel burnt out and not feel overwhelmed. And look, I can't solve EMRs for you. Like, yeah, it sucks. I can't solve billing. Like, go work for the Navy. My wife doesn't have billing. Maybe that'll help you out. But other than that, like, I can't solve those things. But what I can do is help you understand how money works and how it plays one piece of the role in your life. And most physicians, it's a horrible analogy, and I don't know a better one. Maybe you guys have one, but it's the carrot that you guys have in front of you. High school to get into good college, college to med school to residency, residency to fellowship, like, or just a really good attending job, right? You've had this track, this one path that you've gone down, and you literally try to do the best you possibly can because you're all likely super type A and very, very competitive and extremely smart. And what do you think happens when we put all of you together in one place? But when we think about that path, then when you become an attending, usually it's like, well, I've done everything. So I guess I'll just start my career here and see how it goes. Right? There's no secondary thought of like, is this where I truly want to be? Is this how I really want these pieces in my life to go? No one's stopping and really thinking about, well, this job offers me 300,000, but I'm on call, 3 weekends a month, and I'm expected to do extra things that are uncompensated, or I could make 280 or 270 and I get to set my call schedule, or I have no call schedule, or whatever it is. Like, it's all about the money because you're like, all of a sudden, well, I've worked so hard, I've done all these things. Well, I'll just take the job that pays me the most. It's like, well, stop for a second. Just stop. Think about those things. And if you choose a lesser job, that's okay. Right? If you choose the job for more money, hopefully it's the job that you really want, that you really understand who you're working with and the compensation model and what's expected of you. in addition to clinic and all that stuff. Like that's all really, really important pieces. But understanding the money behind whatever it is that you have of, well, why are you getting up and doing what you do every day? Like, what's the, if I dropped Bill Gates net worth on both of you right now, what would you do? Right? What would you do? Like, would you get up and go to work again? Would you maybe go? Would you donate your time? Would you still work, but just not put up with all the crap and the admin and this and that? Like, what would it look like? Some people will be like, there's no way I'd ever step in a hospital again. That's okay. Right. So now we know that as we're planning out your financial future, and we know that when you hit financial independence, like that's your number, whatever that number is, that's like, I'm not doing this anymore. Well, great. But what would you do instead? Not just gonna sit home and eat Cheetos and like watch TV. Like, what are you gonna do?
Not if they're
Right?
listening to this show. Hopefully they're not going to be eating Cheetos and watching TV. Like, get
I
out,
had
do
to
something
throw
different.
something bad in there. I was like, what could I throw in that's bad? But the idea though is like it's not just the ones and zeros.
Mhm.
There's a ton of behavioral mindset piece that goes into this that maybe is even more, probably is more important than the ones and zeros. And sometimes you can work through it on your own and you don't need any outside help. And sometimes you do. And that outside help could be a book, could be a podcast, it could be working one-on-one with a planner. Like not everyone needs to hire a financial planner, but you still need to pay attention to your finances. You can't just, I call it being an ostrich and shove your head in the sand and figure it out another day, because another day won't come. That someday won't come. And it's the unfortunate and extremely frustrating and sad piece of doing the podcast and just being out there in the community is seeing the people who don't take action and then email me and go, I knew I should have done it, but I didn't do it. And now XYZ has occurred in my life and I can't go back. Right. I had someone email me, is like, my wife got MS and we didn't have disability coverage and this is going to be really tough and we don't know what to do. And,
Mhm.
and it's like, I knew you told me this in the email. I knew you told me this, but I figured I would do it another day. And
Yeah.
that's just like so disheartening to hear. And I wish I could help more, but so that's the stuff like that is what keeps me motivated and why I'm doing what I do. But also to all of you listening, some of you are like, who cares what this guy does? But it's important on the other end to say, you need to do these things. You need to care. You need to understand how money flows in and out. And the way you spend money should really reflect on, does it make you happy or not? Now, student debt, insurance, that crap isn't going to make you happy spending that money. That's
Mhm.
okay. It's needed. But the $2,000, you might spend on Amazon a month, highly doubt that's making you very, very happy. Right? We joke about like the dopamine hit when you open the package or you
I was
push.
just going to say, man, especially with Prime delivery.
Yeah.
Kid-
2 hours here in San Diego.
Oh, man.
I push a button in 2 hours, it's here. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I
Right.
do.
So you see those things, but just understanding that if you didn't spend 2,000, let's just say you spent $1,000 a month on Amazon. And some of you are like, I'm a resident, I don't get it. Just humor me because our average client spends like $2,300 a month on Amazon. So it wasn't like a random number I pulled.
Hmm.
And we have 230 clients now. So that's a pretty decent sample size to pull that average number out. But if you said, hey, I'm going to spend $1,000 and then $1,300 is going to go to something that I truly am motivated to save for, that African safari trip, the epic girls trip to Vegas, whatever it is. Like we have clients that want to write a book and do all these things and need money for a publisher, whatever it is, right? Being able to save some of the stuff to the things that really, really matter. But you're not going to get that by reading a book or listening to a podcast. You're going to get that by sitting down and writing out what's important to you. What do you want to accomplish in the next 1, 3, 5 years? What are your opportunities? What are your challenges? What would you do if money were no object? Right? Start looking at your finances that way. Say, how do I want to plan my time? And letting the money flow around the lifestyle.
Yeah, dude, I love that, right? I mean, you kind of talked about, hey, like if money was no object and would you still be practicing medicine? What would you be doing? Essentially what you're talking about is what's your why? Like, why do we practice medicine? And we talk about that here all the time. And I know you did this with us when we did the fellowship is, start with the goals, right? You got one day, all just that kind of cliche thing, but it's really important to understand that. I really love the reason that you started the podcast actually for your inner circle, it kind of gives me an idea. Next time somebody asks me a question about nutrition or exercise or intermittent fasting, I might just send them a link. Might lose some friends that way, but you know what? It's good. It's on record. They can just listen to it again. But ultimately, what you've been doing is just financial education. That's how we kind of linked up, and it's so important. What you're talking about is investing our own education, right? Because at the end of the day, nobody has more to gain or more to lose than you as an individual, right? Some people might benefit a little bit more depending on what structure your financial planner is getting paid by. And I want you to talk a little bit more about that, because you mentioned that you work with a couple of fee only planners, and you're a fee only planner. And a lot of people might not have heard of what that means. So could you explain what that is, what a fee only planner is, and how does that differ from some of the other structures? And what are the pros and cons, if you will?
Yeah. So to take away from this, there's two types of planners. By the way, planners could be the same thing as advisors, could be the same thing as investment managers. There's no universal term. It's all marketing, essentially, of what you want to call yourself, but it's all the same thing initially. And we can lump them into two buckets: fee based and fee only. So the key word obviously there is based and only. Think based equals bad. So B equals B equals bad. And the reason it's bad is not because they're bad people. I have several friends who are fee-based planners. They are not bad people. They're part of my wedding. I love them. They will never become fee only because the commissions that they make on the things that they sell are basically 4xing their income. And that doesn't mean, again, that they're bad people. It just means there's a conflict of interest. And NAPFA, one of our kind of regulating bodies, if you will, did a study, and more than 97% of anyone who calls himself a financial planner, financial advisor, investment manager, investment advisor, like whatever you want to call it, more than 97% are fee-based. So line up 100 people, I guess a half people are going to be fee-based. That means they can earn kickbacks and commissions, sell you products. They don't have to fully disclose if, hey, I'm going to send you to the CPA because Bob down the road's a great guy, and you become a client of Bob's, and all of a sudden, Bob pays that advisor, whether it's a nice dinner, it's tickets to the Lakers game, could be whatever it is. Like, they can receive compensation back, and they don't have to disclose it to you. And some of you might be going, why is that bad? And it's bad because every time your advisor, your trusted person, the person that you are paying money for their access, for their time, their experience, and their trust, right?
Mm-hmm.
You are paying that person for this reason. And every time something comes out of their mouth, your thought is going to be, are they telling me that because that's in my best interest, because I really need that? Or do they make more money by telling me that? Is that the way you want to have a relationship with someone that you're spending likely thousands and thousands of dollars with every single year, and they're getting to know you and your family? And I mean, not to mention, hopefully they're doing all the right things, right? They're talking about your goals and your budgeting, which most of them don't. It's all about money. They charge, an assets under management fee, which is essentially, I'm just going to throw out an easy big number, $1 million I'm going to put with Aldmush because he's my advisor and he charges 1%. So my fee is $10,000 a year, 1% times $1 million, right? You're paying a lot of money, and likely they're only focusing on that one little sliver of the pie, right? And they're going to talk to you all these fancy terms about your performance and all these other things that are happening in the market, when in reality, who cares? Who cares what's happening in the market? Can you predict what's going to happen tomorrow when the market opens? No, neither can I. I can't tell you what's going to happen in a week, a year, 5 years, 20 years. Can't tell you. Anyone that says they can is full of it, because if they could, they wouldn't be working with you. They'd be sitting on a beach, sipping Mai Tais, enjoying their billions of dollars that they just made because they knew the future. And very, very few people can actually do that with some consistency. And they're household names, like Warren Buffett. The guy's like 90 something years old.
Never heard of him.
Yeah. Never heard of the guy. Yeah. The most successful investor ever. And he's worth billions and billions and billions of dollars. And there's only a few of those people that are around. And even him, when he passes, which hopefully isn't soon, but he's in his 90s. When he passes, he's already instructed everything to say, when I pass, all my money gets invested in an index fund for my heirs. He's giving a ton of it away, but the money that's left over, the billions that's left over, he's going to instruct them to put in an index fund, which is essentially passive investing. So when we come back to the financial advisors, you've got then the other side, this little sliver of us called fee only financial planners. And what they do is they, in terms of compensation, they can only earn what's in the client agreement. That doesn't mean that they're all good. I'm just saying that their compensation is now more in line with whatever's in there. So if they refer you to that Bob the CPA, they can't get money back. They can't get a kickback on that. All they can earn is what's in their client agreement. And that's really, really important because then well, they don't sell products. So if I need that disability coverage that we talked about at the very beginning, they're going to help you get that coverage and they're not going to charge you money for it. They're not going to receive a commission for it. So you can go, I think they're acting in my best interest. They're not selling me this product and they're telling me I need it. Now they have very few conflicts of interest. The biggest one is usually around their pay structure that is in that client agreement. And it usually comes back to the assets under management model, which I'm not a fan of because that fee scales as you become more successful and you put more money away. That fee will continue to scale. And we've had clients that were working with previous advisors that are, paying $40,000 and $50,000 a year. And the first thing I tell them is, I wish I could tell you I'm worth that, but no one is worth that. Not one single advisor is worth 40 or 50K a year. It's ridiculous. You need to pay someone based on their experience and based on what they do and how they do it and their time involved, right? But you should be able to do that in a fixed flat fee model. So when you go to work with someone, they should be fee only. They should charge a fixed flat fee, meaning, hey, it's going to cost $5,000, $6,000, even $10,000 a year to work with them, but you know that it won't change. That is a fixed flat fee to work with that person. And then lastly, and I think one of the most important things is they need to be a fiduciary. They don't just tell this to you. They need to put it in writing. I kind of look at it as like similar to the Hippocratic Oath. It should state just under no circumstance are we going to put our interest ahead of our clients. And by doing that and by putting that in writing, by saying that, that also means that, and this is how we do this. We happened 12 or 13 times last year. When someone outgrows us and can do this all on their own and they don't need us, we are fiduciaries and we tell you, hey, Darsh, it's been awesome working with you, but you need to fire us. You shouldn't be paying us. You can do this on your own. We have confidence in you that you're not going to be, maybe a non-compliant patient, so to speak, but like you're not going to mess up your own financial future and you're on a good path and we think you should do that. And some of them will say, no, I like the independent third party. I love working with you guys. Like, let's do it. And some are like, yeah, let me try this. I'll do it on my own. Right. But your advisor should be able to do that. And you should ask them, have you ever fired someone, or how many people is really what you should say? Do you fire a year because they've outgrown you? No advisor does that. So I come back to this fiduciary oath and say, put it in writing and make sure they're acting as a fiduciary for you.
That's interesting. I don't know if I've ever thought of this. Can an advisor, or can one, practice the AUM model, but also be a fiduciary, or are those something that just don't ever agree?
So I look at this as it is in theory possible, but I think it still makes a little bit more of a gray area than not. And I'm not like some prince on top of the hill thinking like I'm the best and no one can do what I do. It's absolutely not the case. But when I look at the fee only metric and I look at a fixed flat fee, I still have a conflict of interest. If you said, hey, Ryan, should I work with you or not? And I think you're a good fit, I'm going to say, yeah. Right. But I'm also going to tell you, hey, I have obviously a conflict here. But yes, I think we can work together. I think we can do it. But the AUM model opens still that little gray area a little bit further and goes, well, are they telling me that I need to basically invest more money because they make more money? Because think about that. They need to put food on the table and they want to make money and do all these things. They're not a charity. So making money is not bad, but it's got to be fair and equitable for everyone. So are they telling me that I need to invest versus paying off my debt because they make more money, or because that's really the right answer? And again, we've come back to, this is someone that you've hired that should be trusted, that you're hoping, and really you deserve to have someone that is completely unbiased in this. And that payment model enters in conflict. So why choose the conflicted thing? A lot of people will, and maybe listening will might say this too, but well, Ryan, why don't I hire one of these guys that are an AUM model when I have no money? And then when I have money, switch. Well, it's the same thing of, well, I'm just not going to invest or save any money this year, but next year I'll totally do it.
Right.
Is once you get and you meet someone, you like them, they trusted, they get to know you and your family, and they know everything about you, you're not going to leave. That's okay. Like if you like the person and you understand the conflicts and you know that they exist, and you're okay with that potential sliver of uncertainty or doubt that they may be telling you this because they want to make more money, that's fine. Choosing fee only is the biggest requirement, but I think one of the other requirements behind it is why are they targeting physicians? Is it because they think you're in the top 1% and they want to work with you because they know that your financial literacy is on the lower end because you never were trained in finance? Or do they have some ties to the medical community, a mom, a brother, a sister, a spouse, right? Why are they doing and working with the medical do they just work with the medical community? Like this is physicians are very different, right? We've talked about your path and how that works and financially what it is.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't understand that. So why are they so confident that they can help you on that path when they don't understand that path?
Yeah.
Right? So these are just some of the bigger things I would talk about, but as you go through and understand that that kind of money becomes a lot in terms of the fee you're going to pay someone, whether it's a fixed flat fee, whether it's an AUM fee, doesn't matter. Like paying someone to do something for you, it is a luxury. And in the beginning, you might feel like you have to have a planner. That's okay. But no one should care more about your money than you do, ever. Sometimes I feel like we do. We shouldn't. And I tell them, hey, I feel like we're caring more about this than you. Please pay attention. I want you
Mm-hmm.
to know this. You need to understand this because I won't be sitting on your shoulder when you get pitched a bunch of crap. Because I promise all of you this, you will all be pitched a bunch of crap stuff over your lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
Investments, it might be borrowing from friends and family. I mean, anything, you name it, you're going to get pitched in your residency, you're going to get pitched in your fellow, you're going to get pitched in your practice. It's going to happen. It's going to be, maybe it's a surgical center that they have no business actually trying to make, this investment because they don't actually understand real estate, but they think that they need this. I mean, there's all sorts of things we've seen that are some of the smartest people in the world, but when it comes to money, necessarily aren't. And you don't want to get trapped up in that kind of mentality or the herd mentality of going with it because, well, if it's good enough for Darsh, it's good enough for me. No, you need to
Mm-hmm.
stop and think about this. You need to understand how it impacts your own personal finances. You need to have at least some passion in it because it is your money. But hiring someone to help you is okay. Not all of you need to do it though. But once you hire someone, you don't always have to work with that person. You don't always have to depend on that person. You are plenty smart enough to do this. Your time is obviously important, but don't just check out. And if you have a planner right now and they're not a fee only fixed financial planner, really evaluate that relationship, understand how much you're actually paying them and how much you will be paying them over the future in the lifetime of fees that you may pay, and see if you're comfortable paying that
Yeah.
because it's expensive. It's a large investment in yourself.
Yeah, I love that you brought up this point that, every single person has a unique situation, right? Darsh and I were just talking about earlier this concept of precision medicine that we've talked about, right? You take the individual in front of you, you look at, their life, their values, and then your expertise, rather than just looking at the data that might have worked for 1,000 other people, but this person is unique, right? They have different circumstances. And to your point earlier about, people might say, hey, I'll do it next year or I'll do it the year after. It goes back to that point of you need to develop these behaviors and these habits at earlier on, right? It's like if you want an individual to learn another language, the best time to do it is to teach a child when they're like 4 to 8. You're not going to say, oh, they'll learn a third or fourth language when they're in their 30s. Can they? Sure. It's going to be way harder to do that, right? And so if you can develop those patterns early on in residency, maybe in medical school, maybe even ideally when you're children, you've talked about this on your show, having these conversations with your children. I know you do it as well all the time.
I got a
Um,
funny stuff in here real quick. My
y
son decided, he told me a couple weeks ago that he didn't wanna go to work. I'm like, he's 6, by the way, doesn't
Love
wanna
that.
work
Yeah.
because he realized that if he works, he has to pay taxes.
Mm.
'Cause I taught him about the daddy tax during Halloween,
Mhm.
that if he goes and he gets candy, that daddy gets a few pieces. That's just because you live in my house,
Yeah.
and these are my rules, and you have to pay to do that in the form of tax.
Mhm.
And I then explained it, we make money, we do these things, and, my kid only thinks I'm a podcaster, which is funny because he just sees the microphone, doesn't actually get the full blunt of it, but, then he realized, "Oh, well, if you make money and then you have to pay, well, why do I wanna I'll just live here." So he's like, "I'm just gonna live here, and that way I don't have to pay taxes." I'm like, "Oh boy, I went the wrong way on this,
Yeah, he's set,
and
man.
I'm backing up.
He's
I'm
got his,
backing up on it."
he's
But
got his
the
future.
earlier the better. The earlier the better to understand finance and to explain it to your kids, and you know. So what is that Chinese proverb? It's like best time playing trees 20 years ago, second best time's now. Like,
Yeah.
holds true on literally everything.
Mhm.
Like, even if you haven't done it, that's okay, but start now. And if you have kids, start them on the journey while you're still trying to learn
Mhm.
and have them understand and feel more confident because they will be financially successful if you do that now.
Absolutely. Yeah, so let me ask you this, right? You've talked at length about the different structures and different types of fee-based models, and obviously it's pretty clear that if you're going to be working with somebody who is fee-based and within that there's subcategories, that doesn't sound like a great idea. That's a pitfall is what I would call it. And so, your show is financial residency, and both Darsh and I are residents. And so, a lot of early career physicians, and I see my colleagues saying these things and making these mistakes left and right. So, what would be some common pitfalls, with the exception of what you've already talked about in terms of how to hire a financial planner, if that's what you feel is appropriate for you? What are some other common pitfalls or early career mistakes that you'll see physicians make that are just big no nos that if you could get the word out there, which you already have been for several years, but just for our listeners here?
Yeah, of course. So, just to recap on a few that we've chatted on. So, being an ostrich, I call it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Shoving your head in the sand and being like, I'll figure it out another day. That's a big no no because you won't. Choosing the wrong advisor, choosing, and then it also goes in the fact of like buying the wrong products. And usually that comes from choosing the wrong advisor. So you think like, oh, I'm going to hire this person. They're going to be a great financial advisor. When in reality, all they do is sell insurance and all roads lead back to insurance. Northwestern Mutual is a great example of this. They pitch all sorts of med schools and residencies and fellowships, and all it is insurance. All roads lead back to it. They've got killer pitches and millions of dollars in marketing to sell you coverage, and that's it. Um,
I
and
kind of, Ryan, I'm going to interject there. I will say that I didn't think we were going to use their name here, but I am extremely grateful for them, because I don't think I would have gone down this journey of just financial education and just kind of found this passion if I wasn't approached by two agents from them and was so close to getting disability insurance. And I was like, wait, let me pause and kind of educate myself about the product that I'm getting. And then that's when I found White Coat Investor, and I just went down this rabbit hole, and that's how I got where I am. So I'm very thankful to them on that, with that respect, that I had a conversation and then I decided to teach myself. So I also consider myself very fortunate. So I just wanted to, I don't know if I shared that with you before, but I always think about that when we talk about them.
that's neat. I mean, good thing that something good came out of
Yeah,
Northwestern Mutual because it's probably the only thing that came
it's an
out
exception.
from them.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, in grad school, I actually interviewed there, and one of the questions they asked is, um, out of all your friends and family, how many policies do you think you can sell in the next 12
Oh
months?
my God.
That was like in our first interview, and I was like, "Yeah, this isn't for me. This actually sounds pretty horrible." So no thanks, I'm good. Um, and we've talked about, the doctor parking lot, just keeping up with the Joneses,
Mhm.
looking around, buying the bigger house, the doctor McMansion, thinking that there's, a dream home or a forever home that you're going to be in. Sorry to burst that bubble. Like, I totally understand the American dream and what we're all told and kind of sold the story of when you get up and you're going to grow up and you're going to do all these things and you're going to have this really nice house and it is yours. And yeah, that's great, except for it doesn't need to be a $2 million house. And granted, some people are like $2 million, like in the coasts, that's still a lot of money, but that is what a lot of doctors are reaching for is a multi-million-dollar house. And then you're going to feel house poor. And that's not a way to do it. Houses, yes, they're an asset, but they're an asset that doesn't earn income. And so you're kind of parking your money. It's almost like dead money in a house. You
Mhm.
still need a house. We need one, obviously, to retire. You don't want to have a payment. But if all of your extra money is going to that house, that means that you are actively making the decision to put more money into the house. And that means that you're not going to have the nice vacations. You're not going to have the nice cars. You're not going to have all the dining out. You're going to have all these other things that you wanted to do, but your house took up all that money. So that's a real tough one. I always kind of say in any of the presentations I give is that insurance is insurance, investments are investments, and never mix the two. And it sounds so simple, except for when you start talking to someone who sells insurance, they make it sound like it's the best investment you could ever make. And it's not, it's insurance. And we talked about in the very beginning about protecting your income. And you do that via insurance, whether it's disability or term coverage. Those are important. But when they start selling them as the best investment you can make, and you can park your money here and you can borrow from it, you can do all these things, all it is tons and tons of fees and lots of commission. Like these guys and gals that sell this stuff, like the whole life and the permanent insurance, they're making 10, 15, 20, $30,000 a policy. If you think about that, and they make, I don't know, let's just say $10,000 on the low end on a policy, they need 20 suckers to make doctor money. That's it.
Is
To
that
find
yearly?
20, so
Is it do you
that's
think?
on a one-time commission,
Uh-huh.
and then they earn a trail of 5 to maybe 9% of whatever your premium is that you're paying in a year, every year that you keep it active.
Wow.
So that's why you see a lot of guys and gals that sell these products. They're not trying to knock it out of the park and sell thousands of policies. They got to sell a couple dozen. And if they do that for 15 years, 20 years, and then they can retire, but they're retiring with a ton of money that's coming to them in the form of those premiums and commissions that are and trails that are being paid every single month.
Yeah, so I know.
So there's a
Go
lot
for it,
of
Ryan. Go for it.
I was gonna say just there's a lot of pieces that you can get mixed up in, but there's also a lot of good things that come out of it. So just don't. A lot of times we see people, physicians, that are excited to get started and then feel very trapped because they don't feel comfortable because they're not an expert. And I want everyone to understand this. It is okay to not be an expert in everything that you do. You are extremely smart and you're probably the top of your class, and you put us next to anyone else in the country and you're going to be significantly smarter. And I know that you walk into a room and you're probably the smartest person in the room. But when we talk about money, it's okay to not be the smartest. But I know you can understand it. So if you just put a little time and effort into it, you will be very smart. You might be starting from a very low financial acumen now, but in within a year, if you just every once in a while, once, twice a week, toss a podcast on or read a part of a book or read a blog post, like watch a YouTube video. I don't care how you're getting, hopefully it's good financial knowledge, but if as long as you're doing something and you're looking at your cash flow and you're trying to make little improvements every single time, in a year you will feel so much more confident and comfortable and understand how your money works. It is as bad as some of these things are that we see
Mhm.
physicians doing. If you just start to listen and educate and teach yourself these things, like on the other end, it's so nice and so
Yeah.
much better. And I think coming back to this overall health, wealth, mindset, that if you have your money and your financial house in order, things will be easier for you from an overall wellness perspective. It doesn't mean that you're gonna make more money as a resident or a fellow. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you will feel more in control and more confident, and things won't feel as overwhelming and stressful.
Yeah. So, on the flip side of things, there's great advice. You talked about the pitfalls and things. What are those big ticket items that pre-meds or residents or fellows should know? On social media, I'm getting hit up a lot saying, "Hey, Darsh, you're a resident. I'm getting into medical school. What's the advice you have for me, in terms of, is it investing? Is it saving? Is it investing in myself through books and education? What are those top two or three things that you think every young physician should know?"
For those that are still taking on debt, the best debt to take out is not to take out debt. So, what I mean by that is if you need to borrow 50K for tuition and you've got a little bit of money for room and board that you need to be able to live, but that doesn't mean that you also need to take a bunch of vacations and pull out more money to buy a car and to do all these things because it's cheap debt. You don't have to pay anything on it for 5 more years. That debt will come back and it will absolutely be a lot more than what it is when you originally borrowed it. And you're already teaching yourself really bad financial habits. So because you have the ability to pull money out and to live, in beyond your current means, don't do that. It is really, really hard to stop that cycle, that mental cycle. It's easy if someone doesn't to not borrow, but mentally you're going to be teaching yourself some really poor financial habits very early on. So take out debt. That is okay from a student loan perspective. But where I see like residents a lot of the time, they will have credit card debt, and it won't be because they had to travel for interviews. They had credit card debt because they wanted to take a nice
Sure.
vacation, or they, wanted to do something, buy a new car, but buy a little too much of a car that then had a bigger payment, and then they couldn't afford something else, and that was now their emergency fund is swiping the credit card. Like that's not a good way to live. I understand that things come up. I remember when Taylor was interviewing and we didn't have a ton of money, even though I was still working and making good money. Like it wasn't like we were Scrooge McDuck rolling around a bunch of gold coins. Like it was tough. And so I understand that if you have to take on debt to travel to, for interviews, I guess maybe that's opening up now. I know last year it wasn't a big deal, but it will happen again where you're doing on-site interviews and things.
Mm-hmm.
That stuff's okay, right? Don't beat yourself up over that. There's a lot of other things you can beat yourself up. Don't do it with that one. But if you're looking at it going, well, that wasn't to further my career or better myself. That was because I wanted to enjoy this crazy, guy's trip to Vegas and spent 8K on a credit card. That isn't good. Don't do those things. Understand the amount of student debt you're taking, and if you are about to be a resident, understanding the repayment options, understanding how it influences if you're single versus married, if your spouse works, how you might need to file if it's married, filing joint or separate. Like student debt is a big, big issue, and it's a tough thing. If you're going for PSLF or public service loan forgiveness, you need to know that up front. I think a lot of residents should just get into an income-driven repayment option and pretend like they're going for PSLF, even if they're potentially not. Let's say you're going to be ER physician. Most emergency medicine physicians are not going to work for a 501c3, but we still have a few. So just because you think you're going into a specialty that never works for a 501c3, that's not the case. So you want to keep your options open and make sure that you're understanding the debt that you're taking out. And it might feel like a really big number, but don't become debt immune and just say, oh, I'll just add it onto the pile. Like, what does it matter? I'm already 300K in debt. Well, you're 300K in debt to buy that business. That doesn't mean that you need to take on 40 or 50K in car debt on top of credit card debt or a personal loan. We've seen residents that have had credit card debt that then refied into a personal loan and then got back into credit card debt because they didn't learn any financial habits other than to keep stacking debt. So just be very careful because debt it's really easy to get caught up in, and then it increases your lifestyle. And then when you wake up, you go, oh my gosh, where did all this money go? Why do I feel like I work and instantly it's gone out of my paycheck? It's a really rough feeling and it's really hard to unwind. Way harder than getting into that place. It's like losing weight. It's super easy to put on 40 pounds. It's super hard to lose 5,
Absolutely.
much less the 40.
Yeah. Dude, I mean, that's such a good point, right? I mean, we know that the cost of higher education is just astronomical. Again, you've talked about that at length on your show, both for undergraduate and then obviously for all professional and graduate programs. And, and sometimes I think about this, both as a first and second year medical student, when you spent most of your time on campus, it still doesn't make sense why somebody has to pay $50,000 to $60,000 for education there. But then especially for us, for third and fourth year, when you're doing clinical rotations, which majority of the time are not even on campus, but you're still paying $45,000, $50,000. That never made any sense to me whatsoever. And, again, to your point earlier on, which you've kind of just beat a couple of times now, saying that you can't put your head in the sand. You can't be an ostrich. You have to invest in yourself. I remember, again, I've got undergrad debt and I have tons of medical student debt. My wife, we weren't lucky enough that our parents were able to pay for it. So both of us together are north of 500,000, right? I mean, what is it? The average physician comes out with 185, 187, something around that, right? And so
I think that number is such
yeah,
BS
I mean,
because it does factor in people who have none, who like
right,
parents paid for it or grants or
right,
whatever. But our average, when you actually have the debt,
uh-huh.
our average is a little north of 300.
Yeah. So I mean, we crushed that number, right? And so for me,
Well, it's
going
per physician though.
okay,
So like that'd be like 6. So if you're in the 5s, you're below it.
okay, no, we're well over 5. Yeah, it was being very generous to us, but we're over 6. So for me personally, honestly, Ryan, it was like this was the greatest stressor. Just thinking about like what is going to happen, the uncertainty of PSLF, because I didn't understand the situation. I didn't understand debt. I didn't understand PSLF, how it worked, and I had these conversations, I would say, on a weekly basis with my core residents when I talk to them about PSLF or whether they should be doing IDR if they're not really sure what the game plan is in the future, right? Because we're going to be attendings, and it goes back to not understanding how this system works, how their own debt works, and looking at these clickbait things. What was it? 97% of people got rejected for PSLF. That article that
99%
right,
got rejected.
and so people
But
are
when
like,
they
oh,
uncovered it, it was like 55%
right,
didn't even fill out the application correctly.
exactly, and so
Granted, it's a hard application, but like, come on.
yeah, I mean, and then again, we don't have time to get into like how competent some of these loan providers are in terms of doing their job, and it just goes back to that point. Like you have to invest in this, and you have to look out for your back. Like you have to watch your own back to do this. But I want to come back to this point of the cost of higher education, right? Let's just pretend in a hypothetical world that I don't know, the president of the ACGME reaches out to you, Ryan, and he loves what you're doing, and he wants to say, Ryan, I want you to come help restructure it because this is getting out of hand, and in 10 years, it's just not even going to be at the rate that it's going. It's just not going to be sustainable. What would you, or like, how would you help restructure in terms of the cost of at least medical education is what I would say. This might be a really loaded question. It could be as simple as like making financial education a core component of the curriculum, or you know what I mean? Do you have any thoughts to that?
Well, I think every med school and residency and fellowship program should have some financial wellness attached to it and not done by even people like me. I mean, I feel like I'm a unicorn in the field and I'm one of the good people because I don't sell products and I'm actually married into medicine, but like don't have the talks done by insurance agents that are then going to turn around and say, we're going to offer all this free planning, just buy my products. Like they lead you into this. It's like the letting the fox in the hen house concept. Like it's terrible, but they need to have high quality information that's presented to you. Now, the cost of education, I think we're all in a lot of trouble because the government has stepped in a number of years ago and is allowing basically anyone to go and qualify for student loans, which is I fundamentally want everyone to have an education. But what that teaches the colleges and the graduate schools and the medical schools is we can keep raising our rates
Mm-hmm.
and these kids are going to keep taking out the debt and the government's going to pay our bills. So what are they doing? They're raising their costs 8, 9, 10% a year over year. It's disgusting how much they're doing it. And until the government gets out of that business, they are not going to stop raising their rates. It's as simple as that. Or if they let people default on their loans and right now you can't get it discharged, like that's with you. If that ever occurred, they're going to be a little more, I think, apprehensive on who they're letting in and how that would work. And I don't know if that is actually an answer or not. But right now, the money is there. It's guaranteed by the government, and they're going to keep raising rates. We just did the math for UCSD here for our client to send their 1-year-old right now. I think maybe she's 2, but we just did the math that if she was to go to in-state, literally they live here in San Diego, and do that, it's going to be about $400,000 for an undergraduate degree in 17 years to 21 years out.
That makes no
20
sense.
years out. Yeah, it doesn't. But that's if I look at the last 20 years of data,
Mm-hmm.
it's telling me how much they increased tuition and room and board. I can pull the data. It's all there. And then all I do is drag the formula out a little bit longer and add it up. Like, and it's going to cost about $400,000 for an undergraduate degree. And I don't see any way out of that unless the money isn't guaranteed to be there. It's unfortunate the way it is. But from a curriculum standpoint, they should be slamming this into kids that are in first and second and fifth and 7th grade, high school, college, med school. It should be everywhere. Financial literacy should be everywhere, and it's not anywhere. It's like an opt-in class in your senior year of high school, and that's it. And then they expect all of us to understand how money works and how to not get into debt and how to not do dumb things with your money. It's really unfortunate for physicians because you don't even take business courses. You're all stuck in the sciences, which is where you want to be. That's great, but it should be required, like a basic fundamental of money class. This is what a 401k is. This is what an IRA is. This is what stocks and bonds and mutual funds and all these other things are. So you at least understand how money works. So it's not just like, oh, well, I got the statement. It says pay for, $44 is your minimum payment. And I pay that. All of a sudden I'm getting interest charges on top of interest charges that are 20% and get stuck. And it's really unfortunate. So I think med schools specifically could really take hold of this and go, hey, for the better of our profession as a whole, we should teach these kids how money works. And it doesn't have to be 20 hours a week. Just make it one of those classes one semester.
Yeah, dude. And what I'll say is actually, now that I think of it, you're talking about undergraduate education is these 17, what you're 16, 17, 18-year-old when you're applying. And that's when you have to fill out these applications for financial aid or, consider the loans that you're going to take out for undergrad. No 17-year-old, like I wasn't thinking about that. I was just thinking about going, hanging out with my friends, living on campus, getting away from home, getting some independence, right? Oh, sure, I'll take out $25,000 a year, whatever, we'll pay it back later. And then
It's monopoly money. That's
exactly,
so much money. Like you can't fathom what $100,000 looks like sitting out on a table.
yeah.
That you're going to sign up for that amount of
Yeah.
debt or more.
So at the very
It's
least, it
really
should be
unfortunate.
like before you sign up or apply, you should have a mandatory few hour class on like, to try to understand what debt is and compound, interest and how to pay back child structure. I mean, we do it with so many other things, yet when it comes to this, yeah, we definitely don't have the answers. But I mean, I do think that, again, and this is kind of why, and I'll give you a shout out here because, it's platforms like yours that make this information and education so easily accessible, right? That people can kind of just listen to it in the car and kind of, while they're whatever, like not during rounds, but like, on their run or whatever it might be. And the more we talk about it, and I think it is becoming more widely known, and then it's going to trickle down into the undergrad level and maybe the high school level. I do think there are some, at least with social media, this is a great thing that they're, the next generation, I guess, is a Gen Z.
Gen Z is already popping, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, they're pretty good when it comes to, like, I remember talking to my cousin about it, and he's 20 years old, and he started a company 3 years ago, and he's been doing so well. And I was talking to him about ideas about developing a website and, how to get these products out and stuff like that. So there is some good happening. So I'm encouraged. It's not all doom and gloom, but we got a long way to go, man. Long way to go.
Yeah. And that's where it comes back into, if you had a budget, how money flows in and out, right? If you don't, it's okay. Learn how to do it, but earmark a little bit of that money to invest in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And you're probably going to buy books. I mean, there's tons of stuff free. Like I've been doing my show for almost 4 years now. It's all free. It's like 400 episodes. Right? I'm not saying go back and do it. It feels like it'd be torture for someone to do that, but you're going to learn a lot just by listening absolutely for free. But you want a more consolidated version, buy a couple books, right? And learn about money that way and then keep going. But you don't have to spend thousands of dollars in some guru's package or course or whatever. Like you can start small. And the idea though is to start, to actually start. And then if you find something that was helpful or useful, tell someone about it. Because all of you need help with money. Just tell someone. You don't have to, this isn't a lecture. This isn't like, hey, I ran into Darsh. I'm like, hey man, you need to get your stuff together and you need to do this and that. No, like, hey, found this book, super helpful. I'm done with it. Here you go. Just help each other out because you're all in the same boat, whether you know it or not. Heads up, you're all in the same boat. You don't really understand money. That's okay. It's not your fault. But we need to take a stance now and to learn about money. So then you all feel very confident and smart.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely. I remember, I started
life.
Rich Dad Poor Dad was probably the first financial book like I've read. Then it was The Richest Man in Babylon. And then it was I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi, right? And those books are just very conceptual books. And, they kind of introduce you to this field of, being financial literate, right? And hopefully an hour in, we're not scaring people, but we're making them more aware of their situation. And so, Ryan, what are the other resources that you recommend? We know you have a podcast, you've got a book out. What do you recommend that people go to?
Yeah, so this is another book, and I have no incentive. I've actually never met this guy in real life, but he's another financial advisor. And I think his book, I know it's not all true, but the story is fantastic, is How a Second Grader Beat Wall Street. And his name's Alan Roth. It's a fantastic book. It's, if you're super into finance, and you know all this stuff, like it's not going to be that helpful. But if you're new and learning or like intermediate, this is a fantastic book to have to understand how investments work and how Wall Street is against you. I mean, the finance field, like my whole industry is not your friend. Everyone that works in finance, be very skeptical because they all have products to sell you and they all think their products are amazing and going to help you. Some of them truly believe that they're helping. That's the scary part, right? Is they don't actually know how much harm they're causing. But that book is a really cool book to get started if you're trying to understand investing. And then I talked about The Millionaire Next Door and The Next Millionaire Next Door. Absolutely must reads. Those will help more with the mindset and connect more than the other books that you just talked on. Those two books are going to do way more for mindset and understanding the psychology around money and why we do things we're doing. It'll be hugely beneficial. So between those three, you'll have a really good knowledge of at least a baseline knowledge.
Love it, man. And so, there might be some people who don't want to 100% work with a financial planner, financial advisor, but they also don't want to be completely 100% and read books and kind of listen to podcasts. They maybe want some guardrails, a little bit of guidance, but they're still DIY, right? Is there some type of fellowship or something that they could do to learn about this?
I see what you're doing. Yeah, we have the financial fellowship. You can check it out, financialfellowship.com. And we had a live component to this, and we're doing a bunch of things with it. We have since kind of revamped the program a little bit due to COVID and just people's time and constraints of that. But that is an option. And but yeah, not everyone needs to work with a planner. And if you do, there's also various ways to work with one. Like we have our outpatient planning. We meet with clients one time a year, and they get 3 hours of access to us via email and voicemail. Right? It's the people want to do it themselves, but not by themselves. That option, we have tons of people that opt into that because they want to truly understand how it is, but they don't want to just go off on their own just yet. But you don't have to just hire an advisor. It sounds weird with an advisor saying that, but like you don't have to hire an advisor to get all this done. I don't want you to think that that's the missing loop. That's the black box. There is no black box. It's going to take a little hard work. You're going to have to put some time into it because again, no one should care more about your money than you do. So you have to read some books. You have to watch some, YouTube or some videos or some podcasts to at least get in the right direction to know what you're even looking for, what you want. But I mentioned some exercises here. Talk through those things if you have a spouse and just learn what your goals are. At least start there. Figure out what it is. Like, I want to get better with money is not a really good goal, right? If you said, but hey, I'd really like to have an emergency fund within the next 12 months, and that emergency fund should be like $20,000. Well, that's a really smart goal, right? It's specific and it's actual, it's measurable, it's realistic, it's time bound. It's a smart goal, right? So at least set a few of those around what you want to do with money, and that'll help kind of lead you also in the right direction.
Love it.
Well, Ryan, this has been absolutely amazing. This is something that it's a topic that we all need to hear. No matter how many people want to just refrain from it, this is something that us physicians definitely need to hear and get accustomed to and get comfortable with. So I just want to thank you so much for being genuine, speaking from the heart, and actually being there for people and caring. And I do want to leave some trivia. So we brought up Keeping Up with the Joneses a couple of times, right? So it's actually a street in Savannah, Georgia, I believe. It's called Jones Street. And the whole premise of it is how many steps can you build to your front door was a competition. So the more steps you had was essentially keeping up with the Joneses. So that's kind of where it comes from. So I recently learned that about like 2 months ago. So thought I'd throw that in there. But right. Yeah.
I like that.
But
It's the best thing
There
I've
you
learned.
go, right? Trivia night. It'll come
An
up.
hour and 10 minutes in, and
There
that
you
is
go.
what we learned.
That's all I care about. Trivia night. What can I nail in a bar at Thursday night? But Ryan, where can people find you? You've got not one, but 2 podcasts out now, right?
Yeah, so we have financial residency that we do release every Monday and every Friday. Friday is all listener content that comes in. So people in our community call in their financial health assessment is literally what we call it. And my business partner Casey and I, we talk and we listen to the voicemail on air, and then we talk about where we see the gaps and what they could do and not do. It's been widely popular. We've been doing it a couple of years now. And then I also host another podcast with Dr. Jimmy Turner. He runs the Physician Philosopher, and that's called Money Meets Medicine. And we talk a lot on the behavioral side of money there. So it's not a lot of ones and zeros. It's a lot of the mindset and behavior things that you need to understand around money.
Awesome. Well, love that, man. We're going to link that to the show. And I also want to put a plug in here for the book. I mean, the book is an easy read. It's an awesome blueprint. And, I know we didn't touch a lot on it, but, anybody who I've come across, I've recommended that, and they really enjoyed it. It's just a short read too. Darsh has a copy as well, so I know that he's working on his way. So, man, listen, again, I want to thank you. You know that I'm a huge fan. I've been listening for a couple of years, and I'm again, like you said, we're all very type A. I'm the type of person who kind of just researches every single little thing before making a decision, and you have helped tremendously in just make my life better in terms of just the financial literacy component of it. So thank you for everything that you've done and that you're going to continue to do. And I appreciate your time, man. Thanks.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it.
Awesome.
Before we end, don't forget to go hang out with my friend Dr. Erin Wiseman over at her podcast, Dr. Me First, on your favorite podcast app, or learn more about how to connect with the Queen of SaaS by heading to drpodcastnetwork.com/drmefirst. I also want to give Ryan a huge shout out for being recognized as a top 100 financial planner by Investopedia for 3 years in a row. He has been doing incredible things and providing financial education via several different platforms, and I have been a direct beneficiary of that, and I know he's going to continue to do that, and several of my colleagues have also benefited from that. So thank you so much for everything you do, Ryan, and we're excited to see all the great things in your future. Now, before you take off, guys, please remember this important disclaimer that everything in this podcast is for educational purposes only. It does not constitute the practice of medicine, nor should it be construed as medical advice. No physician-patient relationship is formed, and anything discussed in this podcast does not represent the views of our employers. I will also say that anything discussed in today's show does not qualify as financial advice. So please be sure to discuss with your own financial planner or reach out to Ryan. And you can learn how to work with him in the show notes as well. However, if you enjoyed the show, please be sure to subscribe, review, and share with anyone who you think will gain value from this. And until next time, thank you for listening.